Call our meeting to order at 5:30. Ask that the attendance be recorded and ask our group to please review the agenda. If you haven't yet had the opportunity to do so, it should be on your screen. Once you've had the opportunity to look through it, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
I move to approve tonight's agenda.
I
second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, moving on to Article 3, approval of the minutes of the April 18, 2023 meeting. Those were included in the meeting packet and again, also should be on your screen. So please take a few moments to look through. If no one has any questions or comments, then I'll entertain a motion from one of you to approve those minutes.
A motion to approve the minutes.
Second. Thanks, Grace. Any comments or questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving right along. Article 5, discuss and consider Cascade Road Bridge pedestrian facilities. All right.
Article 4. Sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Article 4. Wow, skipped right over it. This is the point in the meeting where we acknowledge visitors and those wishing to speak to agenda or non-agenda items. I'm not seeing anyone in the room. Do we have anyone on Zoom other than Chris? All right, then I'll formally skip or move on from Article 4 to Article 5. Discuss and consider Cascade Road Bridge pedestrian facilities. All right.
I will happily discuss the topic on behalf of the Road Commission, who is not here, but I believe Wayne Harrell might be watching on Zoom.
Okay.
So perhaps he could chime in if I misspeak. So basically, we asked the Road Commission to provide with us a design to improve the pedestrian facilities on the Cascade Bridge over the Thornapple River. What they came back with was a design that includes a barrier on either side of the current sidewalk, that elevated sidewalk. It would maintain the same width, but it would provide that barrier. It would be taking a foot from each road or from each through lane on the road. So it'd be reducing the road width by 5 feet to create that room for the barrier. Included with that was a rail detail, which honestly is more detailed than you need to be familiar with. Basically, it's created to stop a vehicle from going through it, obviously, if you're walking across. And then it would provide an estimate. It would be done. It's a fairly quick project. I think it looks like 15 days. Probably per side, about a $400,000 total.
Wait, total, right? So two
total.
per side.
Yep.
Okay.
And didn't have to do anything with the outside, the existing rails, unless your heart wanted to. The existing rail on the outside could be kept right where it's at. And that more or less sums up what it is. Is there any questions I can field on the subject?
We were looking at doing one side.
That was my understanding. We had talked at a prior meeting about the possibility of doing one side or at least one side at a time, because there was some interest in exploring whether or not we wanted to pursue, like the cantilevered outer option or other ideas.
Well, I thought it was also because the bike path is on the north side of the bridge. And there's not much residential on the south side.
Yes.
And so that's why we were kind of focusing on the north side. Is that correct?
It rings a bell, yes.
Yeah.
So
The road Commission offered an alternative to do a wider one on the north side. You get no treatment on the south side that way. So the south side would maintain the way it is. The north side would not have a railing. So what you'd have is a slightly wider walkway with no safety barrier.
just a dotted line, and then the level, maybe Ben, it would help to walk through the.
So we either have to do both sides or we go to.
So just a reminder that the board has committed to doing one side, right? So I think regardless of what the DDA decides, they're anticipating doing one side. They've budgeted for that.
And which side is that, Ben?
I'm assuming they'll pick the north side.
Whichever side we don't want to do.
Yeah. So the question was, is the DDA interested in participating in the project and paying for the second side, right? So instead of just having the enhanced pedestrian facilities on one side the board wants to do, does the DDA want to participate? We could have those enhanced facilities on both sides.
intersection.
So
But
there
then
was
they
some
came,
kind- oh, go ahead.
but they came back, so correct me if I'm off on this, okay? So the road commission was, came back with two possibilities, and this is based on researching what can be done with the road. And the first option, I don't want to say first, but you know, those raised barriers that make it on both sides, the elevated sidewalk for pedestrians.
Yes.
So those serve as safety barriers too, right? Because cars, unless you're going too fast, it's hard to jump that. But, and the plan was to, they lowered that, so got rid of that. But the initial thinking was on one side, if you get rid of that elevation, but then you've got to have hope. We were thinking there would be a barrier, you know, but then the road commission, Eric, tell me if I'm process wise, they looked, they were trying to figure it out, but there was some miscommunication. There was no barrier in theory. So then most recently they were working with what they could do from a safety perspective, and they went into really good details, but essentially the two options that they were able to come up with it given like all the different factors they have to consider, width of lanes, traffic, all that kind of stuff. They came up with one option that's just on the north side where they shave off that elevated part. And was it 8 feet, Eric?
I believe it was 9 feet.
9 feet. So that elevation's gone, and then you can they can paint it, but essentially there's nothing between bikers and walkers except a painted line. And this is more based on what they're able to do with the bridge, like
right,
safety wise. They're not going to put up like fake barriers that look good but aren't actually protecting. So then the alternative, if we wanted to do barriers, which we told them we did, was then this, and it's essentially not ideal, but if you keep the elevated, you're doing a lot less. You're putting up actual barriers on both sides, but everything kind of stays the same as far as the elevated sidewalks. And if you're doing it on one, you might as well do it on the other.
So how does this revised plan affect the lane space on both sides? Because I know that at a prior meeting, we had been concerned about, another concern for doing both sides was that cars would then be closer together, which might increase
You reduce each lane by 1 foot.
Okay.
So if I understood you, Grace, the elevated, if you want to call them the elevated sidewalks that are currently there would stay, nothing would change. They would just put in the railing all the way across on both sides. And yet they would take a foot on each side.
You would gain a little bit on each sidewalk to make room for that barrier. So each sidewalk comes in a little bit, you get a barrier, and that room is stolen from the lanes. So the road narrows, sidewalks come in, barrier goes up.
Do you remember when they started narrowing it? Because they talked about that too. Like don't do it just on the bridge. There's something.
It would taper in.
Yeah.
The nice thing with the option with the barriers is I think it's a lot easier to taper it in. If you shift, 3 feet or 4 feet out to make one lane, one side wider, you're going to taper. It's going to be a little weirder for traffic going in and out of that bridge.
And I think initially, I guess the way I had pictured it, and I think maybe people understood it, at least I did, but no one's fault. It's just miscommunication. I thought that if we did the one side, shave it down and just do the north side wider, it still would include a barrier. That was kind of the thinking. That's how I pictured it.
Yeah.
And then, but as we got into further discussions, the road commission said, oh no, that was not the case. So that's why when it came back, okay, it's just a painted line if we go that way. If you want a barrier, then this is the only thing we can do right now.
So to clarify, is this a plan that the board has already approved, or are they looking for the DDA? Are they looking for the DDA's recommendation as to funding, or are they looking for the DDA's input as to the plan?
What do you think?
This is the plan. Would you like it or not?
Okay.
But to discuss it, does it make, so neither are perfect, right? But if to have a painted line with no real barrier versus, and if you're going to do under this scenario, it just makes the most sense to do barrier on both sides.
I think that we were all aligned that a barrier was necessary. I don't think that any of us were thinking of a plan that would just be a painted line.
Right. But then it's kind of a disappointment because it's not the perfect, but.
Right. Well, nothing's ever perfect.
Right.
If we do the barrier on both sides, is basically the raised area, is that staying the same, and are they?
It's slightly wider. the barrier comes in a little bit.
Yeah, so the sidewalk will be slightly wider, but that whole wider part will be where the barrier is. So
Mhm.
part of the reason they couldn't do what we wanted them to do to start out with is because the structure of the bridge will not support a guardrail. So they're using a extended raised area to basically sink the new barrier in. So while the sidewalk right now is, what is it, 5 feet, 8
5'8",
inches?
yep.
Yeah, so they'll be adding 2.5 feet to each side, but that 2.5 feet will be where the barrier is sitting. So the actual pedestrian travel lane on each side will be the same width that it is right now.
Okay.
Okay. But I think the concept is it'll be safer because of the barrier, so that's why to do this.
And then it just makes most sense if you're gonna, given what we've got, to do it both at the same time. And if we were anticipating 250 per side, now it's 200 per side, symmetrical.
So how much narrower is, I know you said 1 foot that each lane is going to be more narrow, but what is it custom wise? I mean, let's say your average road lane width on a road, is this going to be much narrower than normal?
So your outside lanes will be 12 foot. Typically on a freeway, it's 12, 13 foot max. On a road like Cascade Road, it's by about 11 to 12. So the outside lanes are 12 foot just because they're up against that raised portion. So they have to be slightly wider. Inside lanes will be 10 foot. 10 foot in a 35, 40 mile an hour zones, not unusual. Usually you'd see maybe somewhere 10 to 11 foot.
And that's our turning lane. So
Turning lane is 10 foot. Yep.
okay, so that would be 10 foot across the bridge, but then it would, you know, when you get to a
It
place where
probably
you're
taper
actually
out.
turning, it'll
Taper out a touch. Yeah.
My fear is when you approach that, whatever that street is, once you get over the bridge, over by, yeah.
Thorncrest?
Thank you.
Right by
yes.
the church on the hill.
Thorncrest, right, by the church on the hill. I mean, I anticipate backup, you know, if where cars may want to be lining up to turn left, and if that's just a smaller lane on the bridge, that's the only potential downside that I'm seeing. A little bit of a, you know, inexperienced drivers might have some trouble making sure they're in that.
Staying in their lane.
Yeah, staying in their lane. But such as it is, I do think that this will add.
We call that traffic calming in
needed-
engineering.
Right, exactly. Put some hay bales out
Yeah,
there.
that'll make it slower.
Roundabout while we're at it. I think this will make it safer. I mean, it's not ideal. You know, we had kind of hoped to maximize both the pedestrian space and the lane space possibly, but you know, given that that's not the plan that's before us, it seems like the question that we have to answer is what amount are we willing to put forward to fund this?
Well, can I ask a question first? What is the railing made of? You're saying that it's not going to eliminate a vehicle to go through it potentially, but it will.
You're more than welcome to try.
Oh, so is this concrete? Is this?
Yeah, it's gotta be, it's not concrete. It's got a railing bar.
Hardened steel. Is that what?
Yeah, it's gonna be steel one way or another, I would imagine.
And they haven't come back with a more deep, this was their initial.
It's an MDOT standard, so I can attest that it's more than well tested.
So one of the things that we question about is timing for the project, right? And we said that more than likely this is going to have to be a 2024 project, specifically because the railings have to be manufactured specifically for this project. So it's not a stock item. So I'm assuming it's going to be rolled steel or something like that.
Now, will they be doing one at a time, or are they going to be doing?
Yeah, you'll do one side and then flip over and do the other side. They'll maintain traffic on one half of the bridge.
My recommendation is to have it done when school is out, because there's a lot less traffic when school is out.
Right, although I don't know that we have that power to.
But if we do it in 2024, I would think that we could make that request now. And
then on page 2 here, you've got the guardrail and approach work, so that's the extra 100,000, so that takes up to the 350. And then there's a statement in there, we have to consider guardrail treatments. What are guardrail treatments?
Guardrail treatments. Was that the outside guardrail, Ben? Do you remember?
I thought it was just a treatment that they were putting on the guardrail after it's installed.
It's like an anti-rust kind of treatment, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Could be.
It would be good to have that additional clarification. I mean, it could be a minimal number or it could be a huge number. So I'm a little bit.
The 400 was when we met, if I'm remembering this right. So Ben, Eric, myself met with 2 different road commissioners, or 3 road commissioners on this. 400 was, they're pretty good about erring on the side of heavier rather than like taking, overestimating versus under. So that 350, and then he went into the stuff that wasn't included and he said, call it 4.
I guess my only concern would be having walked that bridge numerous times with my kids, it is scary. So putting up the guardrail as a pedestrian would be very nice, I think. Just kind of concerned, are we going to trade off safety for the pedestrian and make it a little bit unsafer for drivers? That's my only concern. We get one and then lose another.
Because we're narrowing.
And it's different. It's different. It's funneling traffic, and a lot of them aren't going to slow down.
Eric, did they talk about too, like that these lanes are a lot wider than what's required?
It's wider now, yeah. It's pretty wide. I mean, it's right now you have 13, 11, 11, 11, 13, which are 11's pretty standard, but 10's not outside of standard. You could perfectly make 10-foot lanes just about anywhere, and other than state highway, and no one's gonna.
But the transportation or road commission wouldn't ever consider lowering the speed limit because we're making a change to the road. That's
less the speed lowers the overall
Let's say
average.
slow
Yeah,
down.
the 85th percentile speed would have to decrease with it, which it might probably
Is it
not
correct to
enough.
say that the only way that they would decrease the speed is if they did a traffic study?
And
Okay,
they
we don't-
might increase the speed if they do a traffic
Right,
study
The
as well.
state does that
That's
too.
very counterintuitive to me.
Right. So my counterpoint to that is perhaps we can address that issue by considering additional traffic calming measures, at least on the DDA side where we have some control, you know, and I joked about the hay bales, but I mean, you know, we've discussed some issues and some tactics for trying to slow things down. And if this is going to be a 2024 project, we've got some time to think that through. So that should become a priority of ours.
And I think this is a project we absolutely need to do from the standpoint of safety. I mean, walking that bridge, and we've actually had a couple close calls where cars have actually barreled through the guardrails leading into the to the bridge, and it's foreseeable that someone will do it while someone's on the bridge. Now, a motorist may get in an accident, but that's metal against metal against a human being. You know who's going to lose that element of an accident. So I think if we're going to realize our plans for downtown and to provide safety for where we currently are and the businesses that are there and walkability, I think this is one of those projects. If we're sharing 50-50 with the township board, I think it's a no-brainer to move forward with it.
Right. And I'm curious about what the road commission might say to adding reflectors of some kind on these posts. I mean, maybe that's something that's already part of the project, but just to call further attention to it. I know they get see about these kinds of things, about lights and reflectors and whatnot on the road, but I'd like to get that. I'd like to get them kind of bought into this before we move the project forward, because I think that'll be helpful.
Well, and Grace, I don't know if this is correct, but from the survey, there was a lot of call outs about safety and walking across the bridge. So this is a top concern of residents as well. It isn't just us debating it up here.
Right. It was overwhelmingly a high safety issue.
So can we talk about numbers for a minute, Ben? I saw that you included our budget. I think it was our budget in the packet.
Yep.
Given the money that we've committed to the library, if we were to hypothetically agree to fund half, 200,000, where does that put us with our budget?
So that's actually included in the budget. So you guys actually included $250,000 for this project this year in the budget. So if you spend it, it's exactly how the budget is prepared. If you don't spend it, then that will eventually roll over to the fund balance for next year unless you apply it to a different project.
Okay, thanks, Kristen.
So next steps, or what would be helpful to hear from the DDA? Approval?
Yeah, so if the DDA wants to move forward, so the project's going to the township board at their next meeting for them to consider. And then whatever is decided at the township board meeting, then that will go to so the road commission still needs to do their final engineering before it gets bid out and all of that. So another work order will come from the road commission. But if the DDA wants to continue to participate and agrees to fund one half of the project, I would just pass a motion that says that.
And I publicly in the newsletter, I think twice, said that it was happening this year, leveled with safety barriers. So I have to eat crow quite a bit publicly because it was a little different than what we anticipated.
Well, it tastes good.
And
It tastes good. I'm used to it, but
go ahead. No, and initially the road commission said that they could do it this year. When we first started talking about this, they thought it could slide in because it wasn't that big a project. So, when we realized that the scope was bigger, then it's going to wait till 2024.
yeah, and barriers mean actual barriers, not just things that, barriers that can protect people, not just visual.
I think that's really important.
Yes.
Because the alternative is wider flat would work for cyclists, but that's a downside too, because then in theory, cyclists aren't necessarily safer. It's just more comfortable. You've got a wider area, but then if you're that kind of cyclist, you're kind of used to being on the road.
I think those cyclists are going to take their chances.
Yeah, that's the thing. So really need to protect the non-serious cyclists and walkers.
The casual cyclists.
Yeah.
And if they're uncomfortable, they can walk their bike.
Right.
I think we should cap our approval though at 250, not knowing if there's a surprise cost. In that way, there's a level of protection, knowing that that's our budget and this is what we're committing to up to.
Am I hearing a motion from you, Scott?
Yeah, a motion to approve the proposal up to $250,000.
Of sharing in half the cost
Half
up
the
to
cost.
$250,000.
Yes.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Please do reflect in the minutes, though, the concerns that were articulated about the additional traffic calming. So, and I'd love for the board to be aware of those as well as it considers this moving forward, but I'm sure there'll be a lot more dialogue about it. All right, moving on then to Article 6 with McKenna, the Transportation Committee update and recommendation. Do we have Chris on Zoom per chance? Not anymore?
He had to head out.
Okay.
But he said that if their meeting goes quick, then he'll pop back on. Is it all right if I prepared a brief presentation?
Oh, please.
To kind of help digest all of this information we threw at you guys. And pages upon pages of data.
Guys, since we have a quorum and you guys, is it okay if I take off to go to the baseball game?
Good luck.
Okay, thanks.
Good luck with Never's playing.
Thank you.
For a go moment. I'd offer to help you connect, but I don't know that I know how.
You need to hit the staff podium. Yeah, podium HDMI.
I use this like a million times during the strategic plan.
She's ready. There we go.
Okay.
So for those of you who don't have it on your computer screens, down to the right, there you'll feel around two buttons. Click the little button on the right. Yeah. Button number. Yeah.
The notes.
I got you.
Thank you.
Worse.
I'm always pushing them wrong.
Consistency is
I
key,
just
right?
keep pushing it.
Oh, there you go. I think you're talking. Here.
Oh. Very good. Thank you.
All right, we're ready.
We are.
Okay. So as you guys recall, we've spent the last several months doing a deep dive into the current and existing conditions of Route 29 with the Rapid, a little bit of background, a little bit of research on why things are the way that they are today, some comparisons with peer communities in different areas in the region, in the Midwest, specifically in New York, Iowa, Ohio, Indiana, and then, of course, other non-millage communities in Kent County. So this kind of summarizes our analysis and data and research, and then our final recommendations of the DDA's approach for their relationship with the Rapid for this upcoming contract. As you guys know, your contract does expire in August with the Rapid, and the Rapid notified us that they would, or notified the township that they would like to have a decision from the DDA next month. So this is why you guys see this in front of you today. And at any point, feel free to stop me if you have any questions. But what I was anticipating is I broke this presentation up into segments. So I'll stop at the end of each segment for questions. Brief agenda. So first we'll dive into some background analysis and associated data with how we got to where we are. Then we'll move into our conclusions and recommendations based on the data, supplemental information with regard to some of our recommendations, and then kind of an open discussion as needed. So background analysis and data, as I mentioned, there was a transportation subcommittee that met since like late 2022 and up to last week in 2023. And this is kind of a synopsis of all of our conversations and what we had talked about. So currently Rapid routes 28 and 29. Route 29 runs approximately 177 buses per week, and it provides service from Woodland Mall to Cascade Road. The cost, as you guys know, because you pay it, is $218,000. And this began in the year 2021. Route 28 runs approximately 265 buses per week, and that provides service from Granville, basically at the Walker-Granville border there to Woodland Mall. So those folks who are wanting to ride Route 29 to get to Meyer, let's say, will have to transfer. Pre-2021, it was all just one route, Route 28, which served all the way from Granville to Cascade Road. And then it also served the Mary Free Bed YMCA. We were able to do some digging, online sleuthing, and found this old map that shows kind of what that 28 route used to look like before it was broken up into 28 and 29. Also important to note as well is that Route 29 does not offer direct access to downtown Grand Rapids, which is something that we'll kind of get into a little bit later, but something that we heard from the community during our survey as being kind of an issue with ridership. The impacts of that 2021 service change, this is something important to note here, is that these numbers actually are after COVID. So COVID isn't really a factor in how this ridership has decreased since 2021. Weekday ridership is down 14%, Saturday ridership is down 27%, and Sunday ridership is down 24% compared to today as to 2020, when the service changed in 2021. And I should also note too that the information that you're getting is based on information we received from the Rapid. Most current ridership info we received just last month. So it's very current, very up to date. And then we've been kind of updating things as we've been receiving new information. Some additional ridership details. This one is important to note that 34% of riders are going to or from Meyer on Route 29. 39% of those riders are going to or from a stop west of Meyer, which can include Craft Avenue, Target, Complex, Costco, all those areas, which importantly to note, 73% of people who ride Route 29 do not travel past Meyer. So essentially that Meyer stop is the most important key destination on that Route 29, and the ridership significantly drops off after that Meyer stop, anything east of that. 79% of riders boarding a bus in Cascade Township are going westbound, which is also pretty significant. And as noted, the data received is from the Rapid as of last month. As for our key survey results, so we were sent out 3 surveys on behalf of the Transportation Committee. The first of which went to Cascade residents that we actually worked with during the strategic plan process. They notified us that they were interested in receiving more surveys, so we were happy about that, and more surveys they received. So we received 362 responses from that subset of folks. We administered a survey to business owners within the DDA area and only received 33 responses. I believe there was a little over 200 that went out, and that just went out a link via email. And we had a couple signs out at bus stops in the DDA service area to try to survey bus riders. And unfortunately, we only received 10 responses. So we did our best, but the Rapid had quite a few parameters with surveying folks. Our first idea was to just kind of have somebody ride the bus up and down and survey, but that wasn't allowed. So we had to make do with what was permitted. So basically the key results of what we heard from the public through those 3 surveys is that 4% of respondents as township residents said that they ride fixed route service, which isn't a ton given out of the 362 responses. But I do recall when I was reading through the short answer responses that a few people said, well, I don't ride it now, but I'm going to be kind of old in 15, 20 years, and I would really like to ride it then. So granted, making decisions based on that, but point being is as communities age that there might be more of a demand for those types of services. 25% of respondents to the business survey said they have employees or customers that rely on fixed route service. But as noted, only 33 responses. So 25% of that isn't a huge number of folks, but it is something to note. 60% of respondents to the bus rider survey said that Route 29 does not currently meet their needs. 55% said that they primarily go to Meyer when using Route 29, and 55% said that they needed a transfer to reach their destination. So through those responses that we received, through like the short answers, there was a few folks that chimed in that said, I just have issues with getting from A to B using Route 29 because of all the transferring I have to do, because there is not direct service for people who maybe live in the city, but, work in your DDA area. But of course, something to note is that our sample of bus riders was very small at only 10 people who responded. So when we're talking 55%, that's 5 or 6 people. With regard to non-millage communities, so we reached out to other non-millage communities in Kent County to ask them how much they pay for services, how their services work, how frequent they are. So this kind of this table summarizes that information. Byron Township, most notably, they just decided to discontinue their service with the Rapid, like as of 2 or 3 months ago. But prior to that, they only had two stops, and they paid about $36,000 out of their general fund. I do live, just anecdotally, I do live in that area where the Tractor Supply stop used to be. And I do still see buses. So it's kind of interesting because they go down through, I believe it would be Wyoming, where there's a Meyer and Clyde Park. And then they drive through Byron Township to get to Gaines, where Pine Rest is, drive back through Byron Township with no stops and go back up to Wyoming. So it's kind of interesting how that all sort of panned out. Plainfield Township, this one's really interesting to note. They have one stop at the Meyer, and it is of no cost to them, and the Rapid just kind of incurred those costs. So from what I recall in the research that we did with Plainfield Township, they basically said that they eliminated services with the Rapid due to lack of ridership, but the Rapid still found that it was extremely beneficial to the population of ridership or of riders to get to that Meyer. So they started offering that service at no cost to Plainfield Township. However, it should be noted that that distance is very, very minimal, I think maybe about 0.2 miles or something like that. So it's not of a huge cost on their end to just extend that route. Gaines Township, they have 5 stops. They pay about $55,000 out of their general fund, and they've got quite a bit of frequency here, and quite a few routes that go through Gaines. Alpine Township, they pay about $98,000 through their general fund. They have 3 stops. And I would say out of the frequency for the non-millage communities, Cascade does have a bit more frequency, and that Meyer is a little bit further out than what it is in Plainfield. So that's just kind of something to note, that that's probably where that cost increase is compared to what the other non-millage communities are paying. So that's just something to note, that there's more buses that stop more frequently, but we'll get into how the rapid breaks down how they charge each community in the next section here. So before I continue, does anyone have any questions thus far? Okay. So all of this brings us to our conclusions and preliminary recommendation. So of course we use our existing conditions data. We use the information that the Rapid gave us. We use direction from the Transportation Committee, and then our results from our survey. Key conclusions: most riders on Route 29 are non-Cascade residents, and they are customers or employees of businesses between Patterson and Craft, particularly to Target and Meyer, as previously discussed. Serving this population is important to the core mission of what you guys do as the DDA. Less than 1/3 of Route 29 riders ride beyond Meyer. So what that tells us is, if route service were to be eliminated past Meyer, statistically, or number speaking of ridership, it wouldn't make it wouldn't affect as many folks, because most folks are just riding to Meyer and getting off there. Ridership dropped when the transfer at Woodland Mall was introduced, basically when they decided to break up Route 28 and Route 29. That significantly dropped ridership, as we previously discussed. And the current Route 29 does not effectively serve the core ridership and is not an efficient use of DDA resources per our analysis, because of those reasons that I had just listed, that most folks are getting off at Meyer, not a ton of ridership between anything east of Meyer and the Cascade Road. And of course, keeping in mind the DDA's core mission of increasing property values, working with businesses, facilitating economic development and things like that. So our recommendation per all this information is to eliminate Route 29, extend Route 28 to serve Target, Meyer, and other points between Patterson and Craft, like other key destinations as needed. Discuss specific specific service operations and costs with the Rapid, which I'll get into in a second of what that might look like. And utilize those cost savings to help subsidize or fund an on-demand curb-to-curb service such as Lyft Pass, which I will also get into what all of that means in the next section of this presentation. So this map here kind of shows what what that extended Route 28 might look like if that were to go through. So something for the DDA to consider should you move forward with this recommendation is, how frequent would you want buses to run to Meyer? So the current Route 29 runs 177 buses, and the current Route 28 runs 265 buses. So that's something to note too, that's going to be a different, of course, a different cost, and that cost is roughly about I think just shy of $100,000 for between that 177 runs and 265 runs. But ultimately, a lot of that will just depend on the Rapid's reaction and how they run the numbers, and we'll go into that in a minute as well. But that's kind of something to keep in the back of your mind as we move through this conversation. So here's a little bit of a financial analysis that we did. If you were to select option 1, which would be to run as Route 28 currently, the frequency that Route 28 currently runs at that 265 buses, And then the option 2 would be 177 buses as current Route 29 serves. So as if you scroll down to the cost estimate, as I mentioned, the difference there would be $210,000 and $140,000. So not quite 100,000, but less than that. So this kind of just compares the two on what that might look like. It should be noted that the Rapid, the way that they calculate how much communities pay for their service is by what they call revenue hour, which pans out to be $76.37 per hour or per revenue hour. So that's how we ran these initial cost analysis based on that $76.37 per hour. So if you were to eliminate anything east of Meyer, approximately how much, of these costs will vary and will likely vary from what the Rapid will come up with or how they'll respond, but just something to note that is actual cost information that we did receive from the Rapid, and we did our best to kind of calculate that out, but there could be some other overhead costs that we're not privy to, that how the Rapid kind of divvies out that cost. So potential issues for negotiations with the Rapid, the first of which, as I mentioned, these cost estimates are from us, not from the Rapid. So the Rapid could come back and say something different as far as how much this would cost. The second of which is that current Rapid service from Woodland to Patterson is 177 buses per week. They may not be willing to increase to 265 to accommodate for that gap. And the other Rapid may have some other concerns that relate to number of drivers available, number of buses available, the length of the requested Route 28, and so forth. So it's very possible that the Rapid may say that the way that they have their schedule plan in such a tight schedule that extending Route 28 and eliminating Route 29 may cause some sort of schedule time shift on how they have everything kind of calculated on the back end. So those are some potential drawbacks for eliminating this Route 29 and entering in negotiations with Route 28. Any questions?
I have a couple quick questions.
Yeah.
One is just basic 101, but I don't know. Is the Rapid a private company that's gets funds granted to them by federal governments and state governments, or are they just totally private?
They get, so they have what's called the 6-city limit, where they get millage funding from Granville, East Grand Rapids, Wyoming, Kentwood, and what is the 6th?
So they get millage funding, and we're not. Yeah. It doesn't matter, but okay.
Yeah, so they primarily run through, that's how they operate is through that millage.
So, Walker, I mean, at first glance, that it's shocking to me, and I haven't been in any of the other conversations, but that 218,000 compared to other areas is suspect to me. But can they raise the hourly rate? Is it contracted, that hourly rate, or is that just what we came up with? By doing the math, we came up, that's what they're charging us, but if we back down to just the extend Route 28, can they raise that and then we're back to where we are?
And we will try.
It's possible. He didn't tell me exactly how they calculate revenue hours, and that could increase as cost of living increases or fuel prices increase or minimum wage for bus drivers. So I would imagine that is up to are subject to change. However, it could be, and maybe Jennifer, this might be in your expertise, but I'm wondering if that could be a part of the contract of like you not to exceed the $76.37 per hour as per 2023 dollars. And then once we have our contract for 2024 or however long you decide to make the contract for, then it could be subject to change at that time.
That's something we could try to negotiate. I know that they in the past have told us that they weren't able to commit farther out than the contract period because of the way their budgeting process worked. But, as suggested, I don't know that we saw all those cards from them regarding, what elements they did provide information about the different revenue streams and the different expenses and how they came up with their
numbers, but we didn't get everything.
Yeah, I should also note too that we did reach out to the Rapid to try to get several different cost scenarios. And unfortunately, we received a response that was a little bit vague. And they just said, we're doing a big strategic vision next year, so we'll address it then. But we were like, well, we need to know now. So yeah, so a lot of this is kind of based on findings of fact of the information and the data that we received from the Rapid. But at the end of the day, a lot of it's going to have to boil down to negotiation.
Steve, thank you.
So I was going to say that based on this slide, and I think it's the next slide here, that we're kind of making somewhat of an assumption too, that, all right, we're going to eliminate Route 29 and you're going to run Route 28 that still 200, or we have the choice of either the 265, I don't even want to say it's a choice, but options right now that's presented, 265, which they already run, but we would like to say, no, we only want 177.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, from their point of view, I don't know, I'm trying to think from their point of view, because they're already running 265 times or whatever the case may be. And they are already stopping at the Woodland Mall no matter what, because it looks like then they're branching off to these other routes that are going up to Camelot, and I see Burton and whatnot. And then we're saying, well, we only want the rest of that route to come down here only 177 times. That's all we're willing to pay.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's one bus, I don't know if, again, it's kind of like saying, this is what you're going to do for us now.
Right.
And I think they're just going to say,
they're going to say, I mean, they could well just say, no, thank you. They may look at this and say, that doesn't work for us. We'd have to adjust, a variety of reasons. We'll have to adjust the rest of the schedule. We want the drivers, want this, that. Anything is on the table, but I think that the committee's determination was that the current system we're not getting what we're paying for.
No.
And so we need to make a change, and we're proposing a change to them. And then the ball is in their court to come back to us to say, all right, we've read your proposal and here's either our counter proposal or, no, sorry, we're not willing to make any changes. And at least then we'll have that information.
So the passengers going down 17 to 24%, I think it said in there, but we still pay the same amount.
Yeah. And
you're running a business like that.
And for context, they used to be paying them a lot more. But they used to calculate, what was it? It wasn't the revenue hour. It was based on some other. Grace would have this information. They based their fees that they charged us based on a totally separate calculation, and then switched it to the revenue hour,
which saved us money.
Which did save us money, exactly. And then the schedule changed along with these changes in the transferring. So there was a lot of a shift. I got you. During the tenure of this contract, but the ridership has certainly dropped off, and that had, I don't think, anything to do with the scheduling change as much as it did the route change. Yeah. Then am I speaking English here?
So just to back up, so the cost is actually, when we first approached the Rapid about doing this, right? So it was set up the way the recommendation is now. So basically the 28th Street route was a cross-town route all the way from the western border all the way to the eastern border. They had determined that in order to extend the route into Cascade Township and keep their time schedule, they actually had to add an entire new bus to the route. So instead of having, just to make up a number, right? Instead of having 6 buses that run that route continuously, they had to add a 7th bus to it. So they charged the township the cost for that entire bus in order to do that. Basically, we proved to them through the process that it was beneficial to everybody, which is when they went to the revenue model rather than add a whole bus to it. So it was basically a proof of concept process through the first 4 years.
So I'm excited to hear about the lift pass.
Yeah.
Yes. And maybe let's shift to, I'm sure that other people have questions about the bus thing, but let's switch to the lift pass.
Yep. And then Steve, just to your comment quickly, if we were to continue with that 265 runs, then the cost savings approximately would only be about 8 to 10 grand, per. So
And I think we're looking for a little bit more than that
Right.
out of this.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes, as I kind of gave that example, it kind of runs the analogy of me also with the tail wagging the dog. We're the tail, they're the dog, and this is what we're willing to do, kind of thing. And so again, as we talk about that negotiation and or what our objective is, there may be a point that we may have to say, okay, then I guess there is no bus coming out here to Meyer. Because that's what we're willing to help fund.
Couple of questions. Does Meyer contribute to this? I thought at one time they did.
Not, do they?
They did. I don't know that they do on a continuing basis. Do you happen to know that, Ben?
I don't.
So they did construct their stop, and I know that they have contributed in the past, but I don't know that it's an annual donation.
You talked about core ridership. Who are the people that is the core ridership?
So from our analysis, the core ridership indicates folks who do not live in Cascade, but travel to Cascade, specifically to Target, Meyer, and those stops from adjacent municipalities, such as like for work or to shop, from either Kentwood or likely Grand Rapids.
And one more is that there was 33 businesses that responded. Of the 33 that need or the businesses that had employees that were riding the bus, how much or what % of them are from Patterson to Myers?
The businesses that responded?
Yes.
I would have to look that. We did ask which business do you represent? So I don't know off the top of my head, but I can get that answer. Okay, so just to dive into supplemental information with the Lyft Pass program. I will say that Lyft has been really awesome and very responsive, and we reached out to several different companies, including Uber, Yellow Cab, and Lyft was the only one that responded, and I've had a great experience working with them so far. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So program overview. So Lyft has specific programming for public or private partners to subsidize Lyft rides within a geo-fenced area. This program is known as the Lyft Pass program. There's another program called the Lyft Concierge program, which essentially sort of operates as like a call center, and they would coordinate somebody who wants to get this Lyft ride with somebody who works at this call center, but that person would have to be an employee of the DDA or of the township. So it's a bit more complicated, but nonetheless, the partner can establish any type of fee structure as they want to supplement or subsidize these rides. So for example, the DDA, if you guys decide to embark on this partnership with Lyft, you could say, you know what, we only want to allocate as a pilot program $20,000 of the DDA budget of what we're saving from this change with the Rapid. So anything above $20,000 that is subsidized doesn't get subsidized anymore. So however many rides that ends up being. So basically what happens is that somebody would download the app and they would say, I'm traveling from my house and I would like to go to the Cascade Meyer. There's a subsidy that would automatically apply to their screen that will show your ride was once this cost and now it's this cost. So you can set it up so anyone who's traveling to or from the geo-fenced area would get that ride subsidy. And that subsidy could also depend on any type of fee structure that you would like. So you could say, as the DDA, we're going to commit to subsidizing $2 a ride for anybody who uses Lyft within this geo-fenced area, up to 50 grand a year, or however you want to set it up. Or you could do it by rides. You could say, we'll allow 5 rides subsidized for anybody who gets this QR code or gets this link, and that's it. So they're basically, what Lyft told me is the sky's the limit on how you want to organize this structure. Rides can be subsidized going to or from the DDA boundary or specific businesses within the DDA boundary. However, I will note that unfortunately the geofence area, I confirmed with Lyft, does need to be contiguous. So you would not be able to pull out specific businesses, but you could say anybody along this corridor from here to here, or you could say anyone within, I don't know, Hotel Avenue or something like that. So you can kind of set it up that way, but unfortunately it can't be piecemeal.
Is that something that the employer would provide? Like Meyer would say, if they hired someone, they would say, this is how you can get transportation, give them the
Correct. So basically what would happen is that if and when the program was launched, Lyft would give the DDA or the township a like QR code or a link, and then they'll say, distribute this to whoever you deem appropriate.
Meyer.
Yep.
Okay.
And then these pictures I found online that kind of shows how it looks when people launch the program on their or launch the app on their phone. So it'll come as a text message, like, great, you got this subsidized ride coming to you. Although this one looks a little bit like a spam, but you know what I mean? But it's presumably that you would have that link, like let's say at one of the hotels, you could have at the hotel counter. Are you looking to go to dinner at Cascade Roadhouse while you're here? Well, here's a QR code you can scan on your phone at the hotel desk or something like that, and you can get your Lyft subsidized. Anyone can use the service, whether if they had a credit card or not. Admittedly, if they don't have a credit card, there's a bit more hoops they have to jump through. It kind of works the way I could best describe it or compare it as like a prepaid cell phone that you can buy like a card at different partners like Walgreens for like a Lyft gift card that you put on your phone. Lyft also does cover the launching, implementation, and maintenance, ongoing maintenance costs for government partners. So that I think is a pretty big key piece right there. Lyft drivers are also unaware that they are driving for somebody who is part of the subsidy. So anyone who accepts the ride just thinks that it's a standard ride and they'll, administer the program as usual. If a no-show occurs, that subsidy is now removed, and that person who no-showed is now on the hook for paying for all of it. And subsidies are automatically applied to ride costs when the code is used. So basically you would get the code and it would go straight to your phone and it'll show you, this was what the cost once was, and here it is now because you're going to or from this specific area.
Would they have to actually put their own credit card into the system to be able to qualify to do this?
So I believe it would work if you would have to have the Lyft app and a Lyft account on your phone, and it would work just as any other if you were to call a Lyft or an Uber ride. But the difference is that it'll just, the cost subsidy would automatically just download and you would pay the difference for that. So for example, if the DDA decided, hey, let's subsidize $3 per ride for somebody. If I were to call a Lyft from my phone right now to go home or something from this building, I would, if it was part of the geofence area, it would automatically apply that $3 off. And then I would pay whatever's left if it was more than $3. Does that make sense? So pros and cons of this type of program. The first of which is that a Lyft rider is not always guaranteed a moment a ride is requested. And that is because this functions just like any other Lyft service would function. So I did reach out to Lyft and I asked the question, what does that look like then? If I were to order a Lyft ride in Cascade Township today, what is that wait time? And she asked me not to share that number publicly, but what I can say is that if I were to order a Lyft in Cascade Township, the wait time would be very similar to that of if I was in the city of Grand Rapids. So it's pretty consistent through the region from what she was able to provide me. As I mentioned, the geofence area has to be contiguous. That's another potential challenge. So if you wanted to subsidize rides from specific businesses or something like that, it is doable, but they would have to all be next to each other or all along the same corridor. Advantages, as mentioned, this program can be completely customized and subsidized for DDA businesses or however you guys want to set it up. It could be a pilot program for a year just to see how it goes. It could be however many rides you want to subsidize, however many dollars you want to subsidize. Really, the sky's the limit. Potential cost savings to the DDA, as mentioned, if negotiations with the rapid were to ensue. The DDA can take any amount of time you want to determine the program details. There's no deadline. There's no anything that you're facing here. So you guys could really take your time to kind of sort through the bugs and maybe get somebody on Lyft and be in a meeting to answer questions and things like that. And as I mentioned, complimentary program and for maintenance and launching for government partners. Lastly, some considerations for the DDA to kind of think about if you guys were interested in pursuing a program like this. The first is, how should this be set up? How much money, how many rides? Is it both? Is it neither? Where to set up the geofence boundary? Is it the entire DDA boundary? Is it just certain businesses along 28th Street? Is it the 28th Street corridor from A to B? So that would be a piece of discussion there. And then how you would want to advertise that subsidy. As I mentioned, you could have a QR code sitting at the front desk of a hotel, so people staying at a hotel could get a subsidized ride from the hotel to the airport. Or you could have reach out to those 200 some businesses that were part of our survey and say, hey, send this out to your employees for people who used to use the rapid service to get east of Meyer. You could send a link to residents to subsidize rides from somebody's house to I don't know, Starbucks. So it just kind of depends on how you would want to set that up. So that would be, you know, something to, if you were to pursue this, something to kind of sort the details out in the future.
Right. To clarify, these are not questions that we'll be attempting to answer today. We'll have to give some more thought into how we want to structure that program.
Correct. Any questions on this? Yeah.
Oh,
sorry. So as I'm hearing this, do we know the people that are riding our bus currently? Do we have any idea of the geographical area from Cascade, where they're coming from? How far up?
Did the Rapid provide that to us, Ben?
They did not, no.
No, I guess they wouldn't have that. I feel like we have that information. I can double check the survey results and kind of, I mean, granted, there's only 10 responses. But...
And the reason I bring this up is, so we're paying $218,000 now. And even if we, and I don't know what, you know, so if we knew how far they were coming, so let's say 5 miles, what would the cost of a Lyft ride from 5 miles out into Cascade Township cost somebody? Is it $8, $9? I don't know.
Probably like 15.
right. Depends on the time of day.
Yeah. Depends on the traffic and
yeah.
And so if we were to subsidize, everybody, you know, $4 or whatever the case may be, and just put a limit of $150,000, you know, we're talking about 37,500 rides a year, and just eliminate the bus and just say, hey, we're going to subsidize Lyft. We'll just do Lyft for anybody that wants to come and or go out of Cascade Township. They run the program. It's a straight flat $4. We put a cap on it. We know how much more money we're going to spend. We don't have 37,500 people coming and going out of Cascade now on this bus. And this is only at 150,000. But they're also paying what to ride the bus? Anybody know?
$1.25, I think it said here in the.
So it would be cheaper to ride the bus. Theoretically, even if unless we were to subsidize the entire ride, which, you know, I don't recommend that we do, it would still be less expensive for a rider to ride the bus than to take a Lyft. But frankly, I certainly see the Lyft program as the solution if the Rapid's response to our negotiation was, we're not negotiating. Sorry, you know, take Route 29 as it is, or take nothing, and we have a backup.
And for some, they may, you know, I get to go to from point A directly to point B. I don't have to stop where the bus stops and then have to walk wherever I need to end up, so to speak. I don't know. You know, again, just at
the bus stop.
Yeah.
Stand in the cold at the bus stop.
Right.
And or transfer, you know, at the transfer station.
Yeah.
I mean, I see the problems, if any, that I see with this are just an adjustment period, people getting used to a new system. You know, maybe there are people, you know, perhaps they're elderly, they haven't done ride share. That may be a difficult switch for them. So there, you know, there will be that type of a difficulty, but I think that it's surmountable.
Yeah, but that's if, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Oh, I was just thinking that's if the Rapid says, no.
If they say no.
Right, because at this point, if the Rapid says, yes, we'll have a negotiation with you, then, 73% of your people who ride Route 29 are still covered.
Right.
In my mind, I think the lift offers us two solid solutions. It's all right. So option A is that the Rapid agrees to the revised route, right? There are going to be some businesses adversely impacted that are, say, east of Meyer. That subsidized program can help bridge that gap, and so they can engage transportation in some way, whatever we design that lift program to be. Option two, from my point of view, is Rapid says, nope, you guys are done. And so now we design a lift program to ensure that people, at least at the transfer station, how you design it from Woodland Mall to key points, or however you have to design it within the DDA, we have a continuation of transportation. Hence, you have a continuation of employees that are able to get to work, and we have an option. It isn't just like it's poof, it's all gone.
That's dependent too if there's no lift drivers.
Correct.
Depending on the demand at the 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. or whatever, when people are coming.
Well, I imagine, I imagine they have something like you can book ahead of time, like Uber has. So you can book it. If you know you have to work at 5, they can book it for a pickup at 4:30 and have it scheduled the day before.
It isn't perfect. I mean, it's not going to be, a chartered car service.
No, but it's nice to have this backup.
Yes.
But it's better than absolutely everyone. You have no options, and there will be some businesses in the DDA that will be adversely impacted more than, say, others. But at least we have options, is kind of what I'm thinking.
I don't know how the Rapid's going to respond. I'm inclined to continue to pursue negotiations with them to see if we can come to something rather than say scrap it and just go full lift. I think this would be a great experiment for us to provide this hybrid approach so that we can address the broader scope of need within the DDA. So
even if you just did a pilot with Meyer and just said, okay, let's talk to the HR people, and we gave them tokens and just try it like as a pilot just to see how it works.
Right. And that's something like, if you were worried about like spreading the word about the program, my thought there, and that would be to have like direct engagement with business owners to say, hey, offer this to your employees, offer this to. But I suppose the biggest downside there would be the cost that, if you're taking a lift to and from work on a regular basis, it's going to cost you more than it would be if you were to have transferred buses and all of that.
I see that as a happy problem though, because that means that we're getting employees into these businesses who have said that they haven't been able to hire people because they don't have transportation.
And you might get businesses to supplement. Just to get the talent.
Sure.
I mean,
on top of
exactly.
So subsidy plus a subsidy equals happy employee potentially.
And I like the flexibility, the fact that we can design the program and we can tweak the program, and it can evolve over time as the businesses, figure out what works and what does not work for them. Other questions? I suspect you may have more in your presentation. I don't mean to.
I actually don't. Those were the pieces.
And I think it keeps our doors open. If we have a hybrid approach, we can, to the point that was made of like, we can test out lift and the viability of that as well. And we may make a full transfer to a different program, but I think there's been a great look at this by McKenna for us to make some really good decisions.
I have one quick question. Does it have to be just Lyft, or did they say if we do this program with them, it just has to be Lyft, or can we do an Uber Lyft combo? Just because sheer volume of cars.
I have not been able to get in touch with anybody from Uber to see if they even have a program like this. So that was why
that's right, you said that. I'm sorry.
That's why we're
I think most drivers do both. Well, they like flip the sign and then they'll drive for either Uber or for Lyft.
And a lot of people too that are taking rides, like they have both apps and they'll say, oh, it's cheaper on Lyft or it's cheaper on Uber. I myself have done that in the past, and usually Lyft ends up being cheaper than Uber in general, from my experiences.
Agree with that.
So I think we need to also have some discussion about how we move the negotiation forward with the rapid. Options might be to have McKenna reach out and try to facilitate the conversation. Otherwise, it should be me, or it should be Grace, or we should designate, a point of contact who could reach out and start this. So let's have that conversation.
I would recommend minimizing the service to Meyer, and not go beyond Meyer.
Right.
And so who do you think, Rick, should have the conversation and reach out to the rapid? McKenna or Jennifer or Grace? All three of them? I mean, we're not talking about the negotiation yet, but just, I guess,
to make the offer. Because we need to say, this is what we're not interested in renewing our current contract as written.
Right.
This is what we're thinking. Is this feasible?
Would you like to sit down and talk about it?
Right. And then they will either not respond at all, which will give us an answer. They will say, yeah, that's workable, but along these other terms. And then we need to be sure, though, that we have information from them that we can bring back to the DDA at our June meeting, because the rapid wants to have some sort of forecast from us about whether we'll be using their services. So they will have some motivation to, to either make a decision or, yeah, exactly, because they've got their own internal deadline. But the question is, there's work that needs to be done before the next DDA meeting, and because we will have no Ben and no Sandra, we need to determine who will be the point person for carrying on that conversation to get the rapid to engage.
Jennifer, how do you feel about being that point person?
I'm perfectly comfortable to do it.
There's part of me that thinks that it should be the township.
I'm happy to do it with
representative of the township.
Yeah. It could be both of us, certainly.
Yeah.
And she's willing to do that. We had a conversation at the transportation committee. She's happy to be also involved with that. So perhaps the two of us together can reach out, and we can keep you in the loop as well.
Yeah, however works for you.
I almost feel like, from my point of view, it's the DDA's money, so there has to be a DDA representative.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one. Number two, McKenna has done all the research and is close to the data.
Yeah.
And if you are going to negotiate, you want the person with the data feeding you information in real time.
Yep.
So I think McKenna should be a part of it.
Yep.
Grace has been very vocal to say that she wants to be a part of the negotiations. It's the township supervisor.
Yep.
So I think it's pretty clear. You got to have those three. Who the person is from the DDA is, I think, the decision point for us. And then we move forward. And that way it is a very balanced negotiation, and three people are hearing the same thing, as opposed to a game of telephone.
Yep. Okay, I will work with Grace. I think that we probably need a motion by this DDA. So let me try to articulate this. I move that this DDA move forward with the recommendation of McKenna to negotiate with the rapid to eliminate Route 29 and extend Route 28 to the Cascade Meyer, and that Grace, Jennifer, and McKenna make this offer to the rapid.
A second.
Second.
Discussion. Good luck transcribing it. It's a good thing they recorded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Questions?
When was the first year that the bus service started?
Then
As it currently is, or
No, just
in general?
in Cascade Township.
I'm going to say 2015.
Okay, because this data is from 2021, which is, after the pandemic, and they're saying ridership is down. Prior to the pandemic, there was more ridership than 2021. And I think we need to keep that in mind too.
yes.
I think there's been very real shifts in engagement with public transport after the pandemic. And there are huge shifts that are happening right now. And I think the Rapid will admit that as well. They've called that out in their reports. So I think it's fluid and something we have to continue to, it isn't a set it and forget it kind of thing for us as a DDA. We have to keep looking at what the ridership looks like and make the best decisions for our investment.
Do we think that Meyer should have any clue that we're negotiating and we're kind of skeptical about the current contract? Or
I mean, Meyer is not going to be particularly affected if the Rapid is on board with our proposal.
Oh, that's right, because
Yeah.
it's gonna stop that.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that, you know, the people, a representative from Walmart came to a public meeting whenever we last discussed this. It was probably a year or more ago, so they might be interested in being involved. But again, also, I don't know that those businesses were interested in putting up money to help subsidize as Meyer was.
Did we hear back from Walmart? Do you remember?
In the survey?
Yes.
Not to my knowledge. I can double check though.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing their name.
They were in attendance.
They did come to a meeting. I can't remember exactly when it was, so they did have an interest, but I think that their needs would be met by this lift subsidy just as effectively.
Just as a side note as well, I have heard, and I believe this was during the strategic plan process when the subject of streets and transportation all came up. And somebody noted that they struggle to go to Meyer while they're using the Rapid because you can only carry so many grocery bags with you. And having an opportunity like this, and if Meyer were to help kick in to subsidize folks, that somebody could get a trunk full of groceries and bring them home at a subsidized rate versus only, 4 bags that you can carry on you with the bus. Just something to note.
So if we discontinue this, would Meyer still have a bus stopping there at all?
If we discontinue the bus or
The bus service completely? They would not.
We don't know. We don't know because it's possible that the Rapid would say, yeah, we're just going to extend the route. It's kind of unlikely that they would do that, but it's possible that they would do that. They have a history of doing it under different circumstances.
Yeah. I mean, either way, the proposal is to extend the route.
It is.
Or if they don't, they just say, we'll take care of it or whatever.
I honestly don't know how the Rapid is going to respond.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because I think the service that we have right now should be discontinued, and I recommend that we reduce it, but it is possible they say, well, at this reduced route, we can't afford to do it.
Could be. That's why it's, we could throw up proposals about schedules and whatnot, but we need to hear from the Rapid about what the workable options are for them.
Yeah, and that might even fall into a discussion of revenue hour, maybe to make it financially feasible for them. Cascade could potentially negotiate a higher revenue hour, but it would still save you money in the long run by eliminating everything east of Meyer.
But the Rapid has service that they have to provide up almost to Patterson.
Yes.
Anyways, and so there's something to keep in mind if they're coming that far. So there's something for them to be engaged with us.
Yeah, and they got to turn around someplace.
They do, and I think they turned around what used to be the old art van. As far as they went, that was there at Flowerland, and art van was the natural turnaround for them before Cascade took on service.
They would actually turn around at West and take that out to back out to
29
Paris. Yeah, 29.
Paris, and back up.
Okay.
That's what you want to say.
I was just adding on to the conversation about how people use the bus in general. So it's been a while since we asked the question, but back when, so we saw the post-pandemic bump in ridership, and then it started to go down again. And they indicated that was across the entire system, right? So it wasn't like we were seeing a decrease specific to Cascade Township. They were saying a decrease in their ridership in general, which is really with this idea of them having their next, they're trying to figure out what Rapid 3.0 looks like because their overall ridership is decreasing very rapidly. Not to use a pun.
Any other thoughts on this? I mean, we've had our vote and we're moving this forward, but I'd love to get your final thoughts on transportation path and future.
Yeah, it's a complicated topic. So I definitely think that you guys have done good by bringing McKenna in, and I have a feeling the negotiations won't be as simple as, you know, hey, this is what we want you to do, but I think you guys seem to be looking at it from that direction. So I applaud you.
Thank you, sir. Other questions, comments? Be prepared to discuss this more next month. We'll want to get as many hands on deck as we can, because we will, the Rapid, I assume, will want us to be making a final decision about whether we're going to pursue that contract or not. We do have our current contract in place through August. I can't remember exactly what the termination date is in August, but I suspect for forecasting purposes, wanted to know whether we were re-upping at our June meeting. So it's not as if our service will completely disappear if this isn't something that we can negotiate. So we'll have time to work with the lift backstop if negotiations fail.
But it will be a very quick process to roll out lift and communicate it. If we do decide to, if they don't want to continue the relationship based upon what we've outlined.
You know, this DDA has been very conscious of the burden of lack of transportation on the businesses within the DDA and how it's affected them. And I, as you know, have spoken very strongly in favor of the Rapid, because I felt that it was necessary for those businesses to have that service available. And I'm now very comfortable that they will continue to have service available either through the Rapid or through this lift program. I feel that these are really great options.
Fully agree with that. Just know we'll be making decisions quickly and moving quickly regardless.
Yes, we will. All right. Any final thoughts for us or questions?
Nope. I just wanted to let you know that, just let Chris and I know if and when you need us to help out.
I'll be sending an email probably tomorrow.
Okay.
And just to kind of start the conversation about pushing that forward, I want to be sure to loop Grace in on that.
Yep. And I also would be happy to facilitate having maybe somebody from Lyft and be in Zoom in a meeting or something to ask questions when the time comes, if time comes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate all your hard work. Great job.
Yes. Thank you guys for the opportunity to work on this with you. But it's a really exciting project and I'm happy to see something go with it.
Yeah. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Danielle.
Thanks for your time after normal business hours.
Right. Yes. I'm used to it. All right, moving on to Article 7, we have a series of brief updates and discussion. The first item, and some of these I just kind of ad hoc put onto the agenda just to make sure that we were circling back for updates that we may have. First one, strategic plan implementation update. I know that there's been meetings. Is there anything of note that we need to know about, Michelle?
Last meeting was really an update on kind of all of the things that are going on. We talked a little bit about the architectural review board and a discussion around making sure that the B2 district was included in that, because before it was only focused on the down sort of lower village area. And that's still in process of formulating and kind of getting some structure around that. It needs to have a charter and things like that. The new trails that are being discussed for development, some discussion around the Burton Overpass Bridge, which is on deck again, and they're marking territory off over there. So I don't know what, do you know anything more about that?
So the MDOT is moving forward with their project. So they are redecking the bridge over there. The one thing that the Kent County Road Commission is planning on doing is, even though the MDOT project is basically the bridge length itself, Kent County Road Commission is planning on repaving from the bridge east to Spalding and restriping that as 3 lanes. So we get a lot of complaints from the subdivisions on either side there that they have trouble getting in and out of their neighborhoods. So they are going to, that was actually part of the negotiations when we were going to put in the separated pedestrian bridge over there, was in order to get the easements that we needed from them. We would do that. Well, when the bridge project got mothballed, the road commission was like, well, it still makes sense. We actually have enough space there to have 3 lanes. we'll just repave it as part of the project and restripe it. So that's gonna go forward. On the other side, the township has asked Representative Skaggs to include funding for the separated pedestrian bridge in the state budget, and they're going through that process right now, so.
Is there a timeline on that bridge? I had read something in the news that.
So there's actually two projects going on right now. So they're doing resurfacing on I-96.
Right.
That's where all the lane closures are right now. And then they're doing the bridge project, even though they're doing them, they're considered separate projects. They're kind of running them together. So the bridge part of it is supposed to start in June, but it will be a fairly long project. So.
And that's the MDOT portion of that.
That is the, yeah.
Yeah.
And when is the pedestrian bridge, walkway, or whatever portion?
So they're going through the state budget negotiations process right now.
Oh,
the
so
next budget.
Never mind.
Even if it makes it in, the next budget doesn't start until October 1. So
2024 at earliest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
We brought up the pedestrian walkways, the plans that, for the Cascade Road Bridge. And we talked about more about architectural design standards, and trying to pull some information together that ultimately creates this charter, and it becomes a communication tool for the township, of whether it's us or the planning department, to communicate with both residents and business owners on why we're doing this, what it is, how it works, and then some specifics around what those things are, the sort of standards are. And then we brought up the transportation committee and the bus. Oh, and actually, so there was something interesting that got brought up by somebody had gone into, I forget who it was, who'd gone into D&W. I don't remember, but, and one of the people that worked at D&W said that she has taken the bus for a while, to get back and forth to work. And ultimately, they were not running service, like the service that they were supposed to run, she said was not running. So then it was like, so now we're actually not getting the service that we're paying for, that the customers are actually saying, no, bus doesn't come. So that was about it.
Add that to the list for the negotiation.
Yeah.
All right, the next item is a reminder that we need to have the joint meeting. We've been talking about this for a while, and perhaps I'll just initiate that conversation.
Please.
In the nicest possible way. All right. Planting project update. We have planters. Are our planters planted?
They're not planted yet. No,
they're not planted.
Me and Maddie are meeting with the with Harder Wardner tomorrow at 10 o'clock to work all that out. So until the next DDA Economic Development Director is appointed, Maddie will kind of be the point person for that. We'll send, after we meet with them tomorrow, we'll send out just kind of a general update to the board just so you guys know what's going on. But I'm anticipating they're going to plant them in the next week to 10 days.
Is the irrigation already turned on?
So I have that on my list to check with Jim. So, yep.
And since it snowed in May,
right, it's still, got that. I'll tell you what, my planter is only defrosted a couple of weeks ago. I feel like I tried to chip it out when I took the Christmas set out, and it was a mess. Anything else regarding the planting project?
Nope.
All righty. Library project update. So did the project get approved by the?
Yep.
Okay.
So the township board has approved you guys spending your money. So.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Any other updates for us at this point, or we're kind of?
There's not a lot that has happened, but I'm happy to tell you a little bit that has happened in the time.
Thank you.
Lula Brown
library manager. So like Ben said, board accepted the funds from the DDA last month. Melanie has started May 1st, the new parks director. And so Wes has been in communication with her quite a bit to try to nail down a meeting time. They're also going to start pulling the garlic mustard, the invasive species, off of this property in the next 2 weeks. Jenny has been a huge help with just resources to get that started. What we're waiting on to get the site plans kind of finalized are just more information about the fountain. So we're waiting for the donor to confirm their preference for style, and then also some pavilion details, but we're kind of waiting till there's a new DDA director in place to make sure we can figure out who wants to be on the project team. Ideally, we're hoping to start getting the project team together in early June, and we still plan to break ground in fall. So thank you for your support, and you're going to just keep seeing me every month.
Love it.
So
you're always welcome.
Thanks.
Any questions? All right, thank you much. Next item, Metro Cruise update.
Yes, so we have a Metro Cruise meeting on Thursday. So the update with the Metro Cruise in general is that the event and the name 28th Street Metro Cruise is now completely privately owned. So it used to be owned partially by the Wyoming Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce. There's a private event company that's sort of piggybacked on that, and so they bought the name from the Wyoming Chamber of Commerce. So now they fully own it. So started having conversations with the gentleman that's the president of that company, right? So the conversations first started out about, hey, do you want to partner? How do we, help each other, out? The conversation really has gone towards, hey, I own the name Metro Cruise now, so 28th Street Metro Cruise now. So the committee is having a meeting on Thursday to decide kind of what the recommendation is going forward. I'm assuming he's going to come to us with some type of licensing agreement or something like that. So do we partner with him? Do we rename it in order to avoid that? Do we allow him to take it over? I think they're really kind of looking at all the different options, but anticipating that sometime in June, or that June meeting, they'll come to you with a recommendation. So again, my plan is to give the board an update before I leave on Friday. Brian Hillbrands and Natty will be helping me out with this as well. But there could be changes in store for the Metro Cruise.
Okay.
The Metro Cruise warm up.
The warm up.
Yeah.
All right, very good. So should we expect Brian to come to the next DDA meeting?
So I'll be talking to him about with him for certain things. So the nice thing with the DDA right now, right, is like really McKenna is kind of running the big things that you guys have going on. Yes. So my plan wasn't to completely turn over stuff to a staff person, because the hope is with the next item that we will have a new person in sooner rather than later.
Shall we move on to that next item then?
Sure. Yeah. So unfortunately, we weren't able to reach an agreement with our preferred candidate for the DDA director position. Lot of different moving parts there, but we decided to move on to the second candidate, and the second candidate got another job offer the same day we made them a job offer, and they chose the other opportunity. So we have reposted the position, and Katie and Grace will be working through that. And Dr. Siegel will be working through that when we get applications in again. So.
All right. And this isn't on the agenda, but it's kind of related. Is there a search committee to replace you, the impossible task?
Yes. So there is a search committee of the township board, and they will be bringing their recommendations to the township board at the meeting on the 24th. Not to ruin the surprise, but it sounds like they're looking at a combination of advertising for an interim manager while they are figuring out how to attract a full-time manager, whether they're going to use firms and all of that kind of stuff. But I think they have a timeline target in the next 60 to 90 days to have a new manager selected. Of course, all managers typically have to give, like I gave 30 days notice when I was leaving here. So it could be longer before that person is in, but they've met, I want to say 4 times already. So, and that is the supervisor, the treasurer, a trustee, and Katie, our HR director.
So with whom should we plan to be working in preparation for our June meeting?
Yeah, so it'll be a combination of Maddie and Brian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Informational meeting and annual report. So this is an item that I asked to put on because we're required to have an informational meeting twice a year. It should probably be June, because the last meeting that we had was in November. So we're kind of ooching past half a year. Fortunately, we have materials that Sandra left, and I think that you mentioned you had updated them. Is that right, Ben?
So I have them, yeah.
Okay. So I will work with Maddie and Brian to make sure that we can get that informational meeting teed up for after, I'm thinking, our June meeting. You know, I don't know that we've ever had an attendee at one of these, but we are required to have them by statute, so.
And the other half of that is I'll be working with Liz to get the annual report completed. It's pretty easy. A lot of it's just fill in the blank. So once the audit is done, then Liz will be able to fill in the blanks, and that'll come to the DDA before it gets sent off to the state. So you guys will probably see that at your June meeting as well.
It's going to be a great meeting. We may need snacks. Make a note.
Noted.
How Rishi may also need drinks. You never knows. Yeah.
Saw the eye contact.
Right. Get your subcommittee together. All right. Any other business?
I just think a public thank you for serving as in the capacity that you have for Cascade Township in the DDA.
Thank you.
You such success.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We will miss you.
Yeah. Where are you going?
So I'm going to be the Kent County Parks and Recreation Director. So, and luckily, you know, I said this to the board too, at least the 10 years that I've been here, and I know even prior to that, we've been trying to get county parks assets into Cascade Township, whether it's a park itself or trail, you know, connection to the trail network. So fortunately, I'll be able to work on that from the other side now. So I don't know if I'll be coming to the DDA to talk about parks, but I imagine I'll be back in front of the board and the Parks Committee in short order, trying to figure out how to make that happen. So
you're welcome to come back and just hang out anytime as well. You know what a fun bunch we are.
We know how you love the Christmas
That's
lights.
right. Yeah, exactly. Come back and talk about Christmas lights. Exactly. Oh.
Yeah, no, I say I thank you. You know, I always, you know, that's always been the tough part of my project is, or tough part of my position is that I'm so involved in everything that's going on. I don't get a lot of time to dedicate time to anything individually. Some of you may not know, but my background and my passion and what brought me to public service was Parks and Rec. I was a Parks and Rec director, or I was involved in Parks and Recreation for 11 years before I came to Cascade Township. You know, some of that overlapped as a time as a city manager as well, but to be able to go back to my passion in the community that I live in at the scale of Kent County is just an opportunity that I couldn't pass up. So to be able to like realign my focus on, you know, my love is going to be a great professional and personal opportunity for me. So
it's awesome. We're happy for you, and we're glad to hear you're not going to be a stranger. So. Otherwise, under other business, there are some notes about upcoming meeting dates and our and minutes from the board meeting, and I believe the Strategic Implementation Committee. Oh no, just the board meeting, and then our budget was included as an attachment. Is there any other business that we need to discuss? Yes, sir.
But is there a joint meeting set up, a date, or okay?
No, not of which I'm aware.
Okay, I know you mentioned it. I just want to make sure I did not miss something.
It's been a formal request, just to be transparent. It just hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened. I mean, if you have a date.
I thought that we had talked about a date.
We talked about frequency. We talked about having one twice a year, so that, you know, basically every 6 months, but I don't think we just didn't get to the point where we actually got it set up and on a schedule or agenda.
Yeah, the only, well, two dates popped up for me: October 21st, 2019, and June 16th, 2020. Right. The last time that we had a joint.
And they're always, I mean, you know my feelings on this. I won't get into it again because I think we're all aligned that we want the joint meeting. So I will move that forward.
Thank you.
In the nicest possible way. All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Second.
A second, yes, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you very much, everybody. Please turn off your computers, folks.